What's up, everybody? My name's Chance, and today we're going to be continuing our Ranked Rush to Mythic series. And in this video today, we'll be going from silver to gold, and then we'll be, doing our little stuff in gold there at the end. But for our first deck here, we're going to be taking a look at Azorius Flyers. Now, myself personally, I really enjoy Azorius Flyers, the evasiveness of the creatures, the ability to gain lifelink now thanks to Staggering Insight and draw a card, Fairy Vandal being able to build on itself when it has the Staggering Insight equipped. I think it's just very, very awesome. Looking at the Azorius color theme, there's a whole lot of control cards that you're at your disposal, which is really, really nice. Revoke Existence is really strong considering how many enchantments are being played in the meta. Artifacts and enchantments, you can get rid of cat ovens if you need that, right? Furthermore, you have access to things such as Dovin's Veto and Absorb, which are really nice counter spells. Dovin's Veto, it doesn't have any room to be countered, and so it's really nice when you're up against a control matchup, being able to counter their spells and not have them counter your counter, right? And then, of course, Absorb gives you some life, which is always nice in the aggro matchups. So, at the top end, we do have Dream Trawler, which is, well, as most of y'all know by now, is absolutely fantastic. Definitely a card I enjoy playing. I don't think that you need, in this deck, I don't think you need really 3 copies. I think 2 copies is perfectly fine. If you really love the card that much and you want to go for a more control-y sort of aspect with this deck, you can definitely throw in 3 copies. I don't recommend 4 though, as it's very costly. So just try to keep that in mind. Now, some pitfalls with this deck, or where this deck really gets beat at, is when the enemy has some early hand disruption, being able to take out your creatures before you can play them, being able to take out your counters before you can play them. That stuff really, really hurts. Early removal isn't as bad on you, since you do have the Brazen Borrowers and you do have the Fairy Vandals, and you can play those at instant speed, as long as the opponent doesn't have a Fairy. But being able to play those on your opponent's instep, rather than on one of your main phases, right, means that they will most of the time be removing your creatures on their turn, and then you flip back to your turn, you have mana for your other creatures to get them down, right? When you're facing off against something like Mono Red, you may want to save your Healer's Hawks or things that are going to give you life gain, such as your Staggering Insights, for when you know you can get a creature down and it won't die. So if you have to wait to put a Staggering Insight on a Elite Guard Mage, just so you know it won't get shocked or any of that stuff, by all means wait. But don't wait so long that you end up dying because you don't have enough time to come back into the game, Sometimes you have to equip it to a creature and you know you're only going to get 1 attack in. If that's the case, try to make it a Brazen Borrower so you gain the most life you can with it, right? Now, if I was to revise this deck, I would more than likely add in a bit more control aspects. Probably 4 copies of Teferi wouldn't hurt you a single bit. As I said, if you wanted to go more control, you can throw in another copy of Dream Trawler and try to make it a more mid to late game sort of deck. Maybe toss out some copies of Empyrean Eagle and Revoke Existence. If you're playing best of 3, Revoke Existence can become a sideboard card completely, which opens up the room for a lot more versatility within the deck itself, right? I think another copy of Time Wipe would certainly be good in this deck. We do have 1 copy, but I think 2 copies would be perfectly fine. So yeah, really, if you want to improve on this deck, I think going a little bit more control is the way that you'd like to go. I'm not such a controlling player, but I need to learn to embrace it rather than run from it, as that's what the meta is going to entail, right? So I think if you want to refine the deck, add some more control elements to it, or make it more aggro, but I think it needs a little bit more of a push in one of those 2 directions. But I do think this is a deck that we could say later on in the series and at higher ranks could do, sufficiently well. All that being said, we're going to let the rest of these matches play out. I know y'all said y'all wanted more commentary, so I'm going to try and talk more in depth on each deck, but I'm not going to overdo it to the point where I'm just repeating myself or talking in circles. So that's going to do it for this first deck, Azorius Flyers. I'll let y'all enjoy the rest of the games, as it does get us the rest of the way through silver, and then we'll be moving on into our Jund Dinos deck, which I had a lot of fun with as well. So see y'all then in just a few minutes. Alrighty, here we are with our second deck for the day, Jund Dinos, which I know there's been a few copies of Jund Dinos running around the ranked scene. This was my own little taste or flavor on it. I think this deck needs fixing. It's inconsistent, but it feels so close to being consistent that I want to say it's good enough to go further. I just think I should refine it a little bit. Me personally, I know I like the bigger, flashier plays whenever I'm playing something like this. You'll notice in the deck I do have Crashing Drawbridge to give our creatures haste, which I think adds a little bit more lethality to the deck, if you will, because I feel like a lot of the time what we end up doing is hitting these walls where we're getting our opponent very low and then just not quite finishing them, which happens in another day later on, but we'll get to that when we get there. So Jund Dinos, I really like it. I like the fact that it has access to the Thrashing Brontodon and to the Rotting Regisaur. Both of these cards are very, very excellent. The Thrashing Brontodon allows you to take out artifacts or enchantments as long as you sacrifice your creature, which in most cases it's worth it. You know, taking out a Doom Foretold, something along those lines with the Thrashing Brontodon is very, very nice. Furthermore, you have access to cards such as Embercleave, and me personally, I run the Great Hinge for those mid-game decks, right? Or for those mid-games, matches, whatever. You know what I'm saying. Where you can draw more cards from your cheap creatures, and they get counters, so they're going to be a little bit bigger. You gain life. It's, from what I've seen, been good, but again, it may be one of the things that's slowing my deck down. Maybe I should cut that and just go for more copies of Vivien, where we really boost our creatures and use our creatures as more removal sources and things of that nature. Also, I've added in Cindervines into my version of this. I really like Cindervines, given there is a lot of control, so I try to play my decks according to how people are playing in the day, if that makes sense. So if I see a lot of control, yeah, Cindervines is probably coming into my main board, as we are playing best of one, so it's not like you can react. It's not like you can say, oh, they're a control player, now let me do something about it. I like to play preemptively, so sometimes it becomes a dead card, but once again, you can sacrifice it for 1 mana and destroy a target artifact or enchantment and deal 2 damage to your opponent. So it even has its benefits in those games where your opponent may not be playing a control deck necessarily. So some pitfalls with this deck. Obviously, it doesn't fare very well against targeted removal that's cheap, which is really a wide variety out there, because your creatures are all within that 3 mana or less, or right at 3 mana, so they get hit by Elspeth, right? They get hit by the cards that are like Glass Casket, right? At least some of your creatures do. So it's a bit of an awkward position as far as how much removal there is for your creatures. You know, even Ritual of Soot will wipe the board. So all of that is a little bit scary when you're playing this deck. So you're really trying to hit hard, and I think that may be where I'm missing out, like adding in things such as the Great Hinge and trying to make this deck go longer than what it really should. I think I should focus in more on the consistency of drawing the dinosaurs and drawing the creatures and getting to where I need to be, you know, to kill the foe. So if I was going to make revisions to my version of this deck, I would most likely cut the things like the Great Hinge and maybe even the Grazers. I like the Grazers for being able to ramp, don't get me wrong, they're nice, but most of the time your Marauding Raptor makes your creatures cost less, and that's generally good enough to negate the extra ramp. I don't know. I'm back and forth on the Grazers because I really like the Crashing Drawbridge. I think without the Crashing Drawbridge you can go up to 4 copies of Grazer, no problem. So this is really, I guess, a stylized taste, right? I think I would even possibly remove the Cindervines as well. I think Thrashing Brontodon might be enough to actually get the job done on its own. I would possibly add in some Flings. I think Fling would do all right in this deck, given you do have the Vivien Arcbow Ranger, and I would probably up this count to maybe even 3. Right, if you do play something like Fling, because then you can make your creatures bigger with Vivien, and once you get them down to that 6 health, 5 health, 7 health even, you can fling your Rotting Regisaur, which may be an 8-7 or a 7-6 or a 9-8, you know, depending if you got it down with Great Hinge and then Vivien did whatever, you know. So Fling, I feel like, could be a nice little addition and surprise in this deck to help you finish out the games, which this deck kind of needs. It needs some consistency on the ender, right, on the closer. On the closing end of it, whatever, you know what I'm saying. So that's pretty much all I have for this deck. Like I said, we're going to be talking for the majority, but I don't want to be talking in circles, so that is going to do it for this one. And I played Dinos for majority of this video, so there's going to be a decent little bit of music. We're going to be playing this a little bit through gold, and then we will hop into our Mardu night. So I'll see y'all in just a minute. Alrighty, on to Mardu Knights. What do I have to say about this deck? Well, we ended up only playing 2 matches with it, so I don't have a great field of view on it yet. And Knights is the kind of deck where you can interchange a lot of the pieces, and they're all very effective, and it's just a matter of where the meta is on that current day, one, and where the meta is with the current set. I think the deck that I'm playing here is almost there. We got some people down to 2 health or 5 health, things in that nature, and we couldn't quite finish the games out. I don't think we ended up winning either game here, but I still have faith that Mardu Knights is very, very much a good deck, and a lot of the reason being is these tournament grounds that act so beautifully as a source of mana for your cards, right? Being able to tap for any of the 3 colors is huge. It's very crucial. It allows you to play less lands of the other color types, right? To more so guarantee what you're going to hit. Now, you'll see in this first match, we just really got controlled out hard, which is one of the pitfalls of this deck, right? You have a bunch of these lower cost creatures that you want to get down and sort of swarm the board with. However, if you have a situation like this where your opponent keeps using this cheap removal, glass caskets, Teferi, Shadow of the Sky to follow it up, pretty much on curve removal, you're going to have a very, very rough time because this is a creature-based deck. And as per the usual, creature-based decks suffer when it comes to, cheap targeted removal or and here you'll notice I made the mistake of not equipping Embercleave first to my Skyknight Vanguard. I'd completely forgotten about Teferi's no instant speed stuff even on your own turn, and so I looked like a bit of a dunce there. Could have gotten in some extra damage and an Embercleave. So certainly a mistake on my part. And it actually affects the game hugely, which could be why we lost. But all that aside, I do think this deck needs a little bit refinement. Maybe take out the unbreakable formations, as I never saw a point where I was like, yes, this is something I want to do, But we had a couple of tough matches for the matches that we did play in this deck. So, alrighty, now if I was to make changes to this deck, as I said before, I would probably take out the unbreakable formations. That would probably be the first thing to get cut. And then I'd probably look for some more interaction, really. This deck just doesn't have much interaction, so once you get behind, once you're in a situation like what you see here, where we're just kind of top decking, it feels very, very bad, and you're just sort of hoping and praying you draw into something playable and that's, decent and will suffice and all this kind of stuff. So it needs a bit more of a mid-game without that mid-game being unbreakable formation. It needs something of substance, something that can allow it to not just get oppressed so heavily that it never gets a chance, right? Now, you might see this deck again in the future for us. However, if I do play another Knights deck, I'm thinking about focusing in down to 2 colors and adding some more interactions, maybe some Murderous Riders, things of that nature, to give it more of a mid-range vibe where it still has the explosiveness of the Embercleave and of the Fervent Champions getting in that early damage. Even the Knight of the Ebon Legion, I think, is still a good staple in the deck. So maybe like Rakdos Knights would be where we were sitting at, because Skyknight Vanguard's like meh, and the Inspiring Veteran is good, but again, if you're not getting down a whole lot of creatures and you're just kind of depending on 1 or 2, it's not that good. It's just stalling out your own turns, basically. So I think that's going to pretty much do it for this deck as well. And I hope y'all have enjoyed today's video. I hope the 50-50 split of commentary to music satisfied everybody's desire for both my personality as well as the sort of relaxing, just quick view through of ranked, right? So this way you guys and girls aren't having to watch a 2-hour stream or a 3-hour stream to see me do this. You can watch a 40-minute video, right, and get all of that knowledge and all of that experience in a much, much more condensed form, right? Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. I hope y'all will enjoy the rest of these matches with the Mardu Knights. Yeah, thanks everybody for the support. As always, I'll see y'all either later tonight or tomorrow. Peace.